You may now begin your presentation.
A home in Canada has
crippling homelessness crisis
Sick from eating contaminated food, of course.
It sometimes feels like we're living in a world of chaos, but watching a news story and living it are two very different things.
Imagine you live in an overcrowded home with moldy walls that are making you ill, but you have few, if any, options. Or you're feeding your children milk that you're afraid will make them sick, but you really have no other choice.
This is the reality for millions living in vulnerable communities around the world. People who have contributed the least to these problems yet continue to suffer the most.
At Enactus Laurier, we're tackling these complex problems in Indigenous communities here at home in Northern Canada and on the other side of the globe in East Africa. We actively listen to understand the root causes of these issues.
And what we found is that sometimes out of chaos comes clarity.
Our journey starts here in Canada, where over 40% of households in the Northwest Territories fail to meet one or more of the national housing standards. Homes are simply not livable. Over 1 in 4 Indigenous people live in overcrowded conditions, and costs have skyrocketed, with a typical home in a remote community costing up to $900,000.
And this is only part of the problem. These homes are being severely impacted by climate change. They're situated on land that's at risk of flooding and forest fires, and the permafrost beneath the soil is melting, and it's getting worse. The NWT is warming at 3 times the global rate.
To gain clarity, this past August, we flew to the remote community of Fort Good Hope to listen to the residents and learn their perspective. When I heard them say, we don't need to see young people suffering without homes, and we're tired of getting the worst stuff while paying the most, in that moment I knew we had to find a solution.
So we took their insights, dug deeper into the problem, and learned why building homes in remote northern communities is so challenging. The homes need to not only be resilient to climate impacts, but they need to be sustainable to reduce future impacts. They need to account for the severe weather, the short building season, as well as the logistical constraints of bringing building materials to communities not accessible by road. This must all be achieved while ensuring the homes are good quality, alleviate overcrowding, and remain affordable.
These complex problems can't be solved by just building more homes the same old way. Traditional construction is a major contributor to climate change, creating 1/3 of the world's overall waste and 40% of the world's CO2 emissions.
By listening and understanding why current solutions aren't working, we were able to cut through the chaos, and the answer was clear. A new approach is needed that brings together existing housing innovations in a way that's never been done before.
At Caponia Innovations, we're building tiny homes to provide an affordable option to transition residents into healthy living situations with a building envelope, interior, and foundation that can be flat-packed and shipped via Seacan to be assembled on site in days versus months. We are essentially providing a house in a box.
Over the past year, we've worked with experts in architecture, engineering, sustainability, Indigenous culture, and northern housing to create our solution.
The homes will be built using structural insulated panels. The insulation is made from over 450,000 upcycled plastic bottles, covered in fiberglass sheathing using a unique patented process inspired by the marine industry. This ensures that the panels are watertight and that they do not mold.
The panels assemble quickly to effectively create an airtight cube that makes the home nearly twice as energy efficient. This is one of the ways we're incorporating passive house principles into our design. We're also incorporating net zero principles through the use of renewable energy sources to reduce their reliance on fossil fuels.
For the interior, we'll be using 100% recyclable and water-resistant wall and ceiling panels that can be installed 4 times faster than drywall. To account for the melting permafrost, we'll be building on helical pile foundations, and we are working with world-class researchers to investigate combining the piles with technology that will maintain the permafrost.
To get all of our components up to the remote northern communities, we are working with an expert with over 20 years of experience in military logistics around the world. Our partner on site will be Northern Industrial Construction based out of Yellowknife. They have extensive experience constructing in remote Arctic and subarctic locations.
But to truly provide a complete house in a box, we have partnered with IKEA. They will be meeting with the communities in order to understand their life at home and create custom interior packages for the residents to choose from.
Our 1-bedroom base model is under 600 square feet and will be priced at $300,000, 1/3 the cost of a typical home in the NWT.
And we're not just selling these homes the same old way either. Working with the residents, what also became clear is that they need and want more than just homes. They need jobs and economic prosperity.
Our business model will involve the communities as joint venture partners. Together, we'll be adjusting the designs to meet their specific needs, ensure a minimum of 50% of the labor on each build is local, and that a portion of the profit remains in the community. We are working with Castile Construction to provide the residents the necessary training to help build and maintain their homes with a view of the communities becoming self-sustaining over time.
And we are currently discussing a partnership with the Northwest Territories Métis Nation to build our first model home this fall in a location that is easily accessible for the communities to visit and view the design. Following this, the housing manager has told us that he would like to create senior villages as well as transitional housing for young adults recovering from addiction.
Using these insights, we will then build our first remote home in the spring in partnership with Yamoga Land Corporation in Fort Good Hope. Their housing plan includes a further of 20 homes, resulting in total potential revenue of over $6 million.
The Regional Director General of ISC in Cernak is supporting us in developing these partnerships and has indicated a vision of replicating our concept across the North in First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. And a representative at the UN also told us that the option to scale to other vulnerable populations is limitless because chaos has no boundaries.
The next part of our journey brings us to the other side of the world, 13,000 kilometers away in East Africa, where they have the highest global incidence of ill health, disability, and early death from milk-borne diseases.
And this problem is only getting worse. Climate change is leading to more frequent, prolonged, and severe droughts that are forcing over 70% of East African farmers to switch from cows and other livestock to camels because only they can survive these extreme conditions.
Unfortunately, this milk is mostly consumed raw and can contain a number of harmful pathogens, including MERS, a coronavirus 10 times deadlier than COVID-19. This is a life-threatening problem.
This problem is deeply personal to me. I experienced the MERS outbreak while living in Oman as a child, and when volunteering in Tanzania, saw firsthand the devastating impacts of unsafe food on young children. These experiences never left me, and I knew that I needed to be part of the solution.
Pasteurization would destroy these harmful pathogens, but up to 90% of farmers sell their milk raw through the informal, unregulated market rather than through the formal dairy supply chain where it would be pasteurized.
The supply chain looks different in each country, but regardless, when the milk is processed, not only does it last longer, it also sells for a premium. For example, in Rwanda, farmers receive 300 francs per liter of raw milk, with 10% of it typically being rejected due to spoilage. The milk that is accepted is then boiled and sold by the kiosk for on average twice what the farmers receive for their raw milk.
So farmers need to pasteurize their milk, not only for health reasons, but for economic reasons as well. Unfortunately, existing pasteurization solutions simply don't work for small farmers. They are too large and expensive for individual use, require power sources that they do not have access to, and rely on industrial-level training to operate. The answer was clear to us. They need a simple solution to this complex problem. So we developed Safi.
With our handle, farmers simply need to heat a pot containing milk, clamp on the adjustable handle, turn on the whisk to stir the milk, and our proprietary thermometer with a simple 3-color LED display will indicate when conditions for pasteurization have been met. It is compact, does not require power, and allows farmers to easily pasteurize their average daily yield in as little as 3 minutes.
The development of our handle began 2 years ago when we entered an international competition judged by the UN, UNICEF, and World Health Organization, where we placed first out of 1,000 participants. This year, we raised $12,000 in direct funding and $37,000 in in-kind support from an Austrian accelerator.
This funding has helped us continue our R&D with industry professionals and academics. With their help, over the past 2 years, we've created 4 different prototypes and are in the process of patenting 2 of our designs.
We just came back from Rwanda this week after field testing and working with our local partners. We also established a relationship with a local manufacturer that will allow us to be in full production by the end of this year.
We also met with a number of key ministry officials and NGOs. The feedback we received will help us refine the design and gain a ministry seal of approval.
In speaking with them, we learned how important our handle can be not only for the farmers but also for the kiosks, where over 80% of the milk is sold. At these kiosks, they are boiling the milk 3 times to ensure that it's safe to drink. Unfortunately, this causes the milk to lose much of its taste and nutritional value. The energy used to boil is also extremely expensive, but using our handle could reduce this cost by 2/3.
We have established relationships with 11 milk cooperatives who will be distributing our handle, 2 of which have already signed letter of intent to pilot over 300 handles this fall. Yakib, the largest milk cooperative in Rwanda, is looking to integrate our handle at all 10 of their milk collection centers.
We project over 4,700 farmers and a minimum of 1,000 kiosks will use our handle in the first year, resulting in revenue of over 127,000 in Rwanda alone. The initial investment can be recouped very quickly. The payback for the kiosk is less than 4 days, not including savings in electricity. And for the farmers, the payback is just over 2 weeks, based on lower spoilage alone.
But the true impact on the farmers and their families is best described by Laurent from the Ripple Effect.
And once they increase their income levels, actually, some farmers have been able to pay for their children, paying better schools, paying school fees, paying school materials, and everything they need to make sure that their children can go to schools.
To scale beyond Rwanda, we've been invited to booth at the African Dairy Conference and Exhibition this September in Uganda, and have plans to visit Kenya and Tanzania, where we have received interest from local nonprofits.
But unsafe milk is a global issue, and so we are also investigating the possibility of scaling to other areas with similar issues, like Pakistan and India. Rwanda is just the beginning.
In a world full of chaos, we listened and found clarity.
Clarity to build affordable housing to transition Indigenous people from overcrowded conditions to a healthy place they can call home for generations.
And clarity to create a way to reduce the spread of milk-borne diseases, so East African families can feel confident that their children are drinking milk that is nutritious and safe.
At Enactus Laurier, we're proud to be presenting 2 new independent enterprises that have raised over $60,000 this year to create a new reality for vulnerable communities around the globe. Thank you. Yeah.
We will now begin the question and answer period. Judges, please raise your hand to indicate you have a question, and a microphone will be brought to you. When asking your question, please stand if you are able.
Hi. With Safi, looking at the diagram to do with the unit, have you considered some of the risks that would be associated with using any heat source, knowing that across those countries there are a variety of unhealthy sources they're using today? What have you considered there?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing up. That's actually a great point. And when we were in Rwanda last week, we were noticing they were using charcoal stoves as well. And so we're actually in the process of creating a secondary handle, which has an existing heat rod, which heats the milk for the farmers or the kiosks themselves. That version does require electricity, so it will be more focused on the kiosks that do have access to electricity. But that's the way we're ensuring that they don't use things like charcoal stoves for their health, like you mentioned, but also for the environment.
Any concern with, from after the pasteurization, getting it to the kiosks and some of the more informal markets and contamination after pasteurization? And how would you communicate, or how would the business model communicate that out to end clients?
For sure. So after pasteurization, like you mentioned, there could be recontamination only if the milk is not refrigerated afterwards. However, all the kiosks in Rwanda must have refrigeration in them. They are legally binded to do so, whether they're from the informal or formal market. So that's how we're mitigating the risk of the milk being recontaminated, because they do have refrigeration. And we're also working with the Ministry of Agriculture for marketing of the handle. And so this would all be included of when we're educating on how to use the handle and how it should be used.
For the Kaponya project, can you just tell us a little bit more about the revenue model, who pays, and then who owns the tiny homes?
We're working closely with Indigenous Services Canada and CERNAC, and they are connecting us with communities that have received funding for housing, that are also very entrepreneurial in their spirit, and are looking for innovations like ours. They would then, there's 2 models which the communities can use. Sometimes the land corporations buy the homes and have the residents live in them, or the residents themselves will buy the homes, but the needs are very specific to the community, which is why we focused on a joint venture partnership to understand the needs that they have.
How did you identify the amazing recycled products for the homes, and why do you think they're not more used?
This project was focused on sustainability and specifically on how climate change was impacting people, which is one of the major issues in Canada, specifically for communities in the north. And doing research and searching for manufacturers who did value what we valued, we stumbled across Ecoplast, who upcycles it, and similar to the marine industry, creates a very airtight cube that is resistant to mold, which is a big issue in the north. After learning that, we locked in and sort of partnered with them, and now they're supplying us with their panels.
On the Caponia product, when you sell the 33 homes, that'll generate a fair amount of revenue. Will it generate any profit, and if so, what will the profit be reinvested in?
With our joint venture agreement, we're currently negotiating them, but the view is that the profit with a 20% margin will be reinvested, split between both the community and ourselves, and we will use it to scale across all regions with housing issues. We've partnered with 3 Enactus universities in Brazil, Germany, and South Africa to investigate building materials that can work in hotter climates, and we also are working with a company in Australia who uses hemp to create their own SIP panels, which will work in those warmer climates.
I just had a question about the team and how you manage your focus and resources, because you've got 2 great concepts, but they're quite different, and there's not an obvious synergy between the 2 of them. So, you know, what I was thinking about, how do you manage that as a team, and would you make more impact if you went all in on one idea versus the 2 ideas?
Yes, of course, that's a great question. Here at Enactus Laurier, we have over 150 students who are helping with the 6 ventures that we're building under Enactus Laurier.
Your time has expired. Judges and guests, please help me in thanking the team from Wilfrid Laurier University.